What up, folks? Appreciate you tuning in to another episode of The Hustle. On this episode, myself, the mad scientist Lee Roper, and the super passionate Adam Fellers talk about youth wrestling, progression, coaching, mental strategy, tactics, dealing with parents, obligations, and our responsibilities as coaches. Loved it. Hour and change. Check it out. Get some.
And we're live. But if you're listening later, then it won't be live. So, Hope, what's up, dog?
Not a whole lot, my man. Glad we got schedule freed up to talk about. I'm pumped.
I bailed on you last night. Classic Fretwell style. I said we were going to do this, and then surprise, we didn't.
You're a real busy man. I get it.
So we've been kind of talking about this for a minute. And it's something that you've kind of grown a little bit more, I would say, kind of passionate about recently. And I've actually kind of been on the opposite end of the spectrum, not the opposite end of the spectrum, but leaning one way. And you're kind of steering me back towards reality a little bit with the entirety of this youth wrestling thing. So I'm gonna kind of defer to you to kind of start laying the foundation of where your head's at on this whole youth wrestling thing.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty passionate about it. I've spent the majority of my coaching career in the youth world. That's where I really started off and where I cut my teeth. So it's something I'm pretty passionate about, and probably the area of coaching I'm most knowledgeable in, just from a practice standpoint. When you do the same thing I did for a lot of years, man, you're on the mat twice a day with a lot of individuals, and you get a lot of time with kids. And really the thing I became passionate about, man, is yeah, of course, man, we'll get into like training philosophies and all of that, but man, it's what I see on social media all the time about, I mean, and it's not just youth wrestling in general. It's just negativity in the youth sports world. And yes, I get it, man. There's a lot of bad things that happen out there, but and that's in every situation and every environment you're in, that you can focus on the negative. And I was sitting in the sauna, and I was talking with Doug and one of our supporters, and one of our supporters, he's got a young kid that gets into wrestling, and it was at Tulsa time. And anytime you talk Tulsa, you know what comes up, man. You've got really a 30-second count, and everybody's going to talk about crazy dads, crazy coaches, crazy things that happen at Tulsa.
Right.
And this guy that's really, man, he loves wrestling, and he's a big supporter of us, and he's just an unbelievable guy. He's like, yeah, man, I'm kind of scared to get my kid into youth wrestling by all these stories I hear. And look, man, and I'm guilty as anybody. I've told those stories because they're really good stories. Man, I got a story of a dad coming down out of the stands, wiping a kid's blood on his face and carrying the guy around with his shirt off. Like, I've seen crazy things on the mat too.
I remember that.
It was the nuttiest thing I've ever seen, and it's a great story, and it gets a lot of laughs at people, but it's just one story, right? And I've spent, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at Tulsa, and pretty much every other big youth tournament outside of Reno I've been to for quite a few years. And man, I just want to even out the score a little bit by how many great things I've seen. Yeah, there's crazy parents out there. There's crazy coaches out there, and you'll see those things, especially when you go looking for them. And that's what gets the likes and the mentions and interaction on social media too. But man, I've seen so many great interactions with kid coming off, tough loss, battled really hard. There's a kid from Texas that I can remember, and actually, man, thanked his dad for like the affection and compassion he showed his kid. Don't know him from Adam, don't know the kid, don't remember the name, but it was just one of those times that stood out. And he was like, made a great life lesson about how you're not going to accomplish everything that you want to in life, that you're going to fall short. And when you do fall short, yes, there's going to be pain, there's going to be tears, there's going to be heartache, especially when it becomes something big in your life. But it's the lessons you're going to learn by going out there and putting yourself out. And he's told his kid, like, I'm proud of you for actually stepping up and competing with everything you had. And slapped him on the butt, gave him a hug, told him I loved you. And then they went on about their day. And man, I would say the positive interactions far outweigh the negative ones that I saw in really a decade of youth coaching. but they just don't stick in your head and they don't make good stories. So you don't hear them as much. Man, what comes to mind immediately is like Pinnacle and the interactions I observe with those guys having with their athletes. Almost always positive, almost always teaching a life lesson that these big highs and big lows in our sport that it gives us every single weekend gives them an opportunity to talk to these guys about. And their guys, I mean, obviously they do a great job. So I was sticking my ear in trying to listen and learn some things like I always do. And so many great interactions with those guys. I mean, yeah, like I said before, man, if you go looking for crazy, you'll find it. Just like if you go to 6U at Tulsa and you start watching, you're going to see a lot of crazy stuff because it's pretty crazy to take your 6-year-old all the way across the country and get them in a bracket and wrestle for a whole weekend. So you're going to see some crazy things there. But, man, I just want to start spreading the word more and start making people conscious that the people that aren't in wrestling as much that know, it's kind of scaring them a little bit how bad we're talking about the environment is for kids. And just in my experience, it wasn't. It was a very positive place for a lot of kids to go chase some of their goals. And that's just become a passion project of mine. Like when I see those things, I'm sure I come off rude a lot because I'm brash and I have trouble communicating like a normal person. But man, I just want to set the record straight. There's a lot of people out there doing it really well and making a huge impact, positive impact in kids' lives, more so than the crazy coaches or parents out there that you see the negative stuff after a kid loses or anything that happens on the mat.
Yeah, you kind of brought that up, and it was probably about 3-4 months ago, because there was a little thread on there was a little discussion, debate, whatever on Twitter, and it was kind of leaning that way. And I remember me and you were kind of talking after the fact, via text or whatever, and you were just like, I'm tired of everybody thinking that every youth wrestling parent is a crazy parent, every youth wrestling coach is a crazy coach, and it's not the case. And like, I didn't go to near as many youth tournaments as I normally do this year. Just smaller numbers this year and this, that, and the other. But like the ones I did go to, I actually paid a little bit more attention to like interactions of kids. Like you said, like going up in the stands afterwards, and just trying to be a little bit more observant. And it wasn't even 50-50. It was more like a 70-30. Like the mom and dads weren't like, slamming stuff around and, talking mean to the kid or whatever and things like that. And again, like you usually find what you're looking for, right? So if you go to a tournament and you're trying to find that stuff, you can. But I agree. I think a lot of times it's the tone is set. Two things. The tone is set a lot of times by the coach. And, you talk about private training versus a USA Wrestling Club. Sometimes that's a drastic difference depending on what part of the world you're in, right? So like you talk about USA Wrestling Clubs and maybe the Southeast, you're talking about some volunteer dads and maybe a hit and a miss with a guy that's a higher level guy. And then you talk about private training facilities, you're talking about guys that are, I don't want to say professional coaches, but it's a totally different level, right? So, and parents kind of feed off of what the coaching staff and the style that the coaching staff brings. And like, perfect example with us, like when we started out, like, we just had kids that worked hard and parents that didn't know much different. And then their kids started getting good. And it was like there was this expectation put on them. And then you started seeing kind of some of these parents' true colors shine through, and we didn't stand for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Kevin Masters will tell you to this day, there was a point where Nick started getting good, and he just started losing his mind. And there were weekends where you would put him aside, and weekends where I would put him aside, and he's forever grateful for that. And this isn't something that he didn't tell anybody else, but, it kind of got to that point to where the other parents that were kind of watching that go down that maybe were thinking about taking that route with their kid kind of looked at how we handled it as a coaching staff and they're like, oh, okay, so if I do act that way, that's not going to be welcomed by Cliff and Lee, and maybe I need to put myself in check, and maybe I need to realize that that's not the way to go about it, or we just need to go to a different club where the coach is okay with me, dog cussing my kid and pulling him outside and embarrassing him in front of everybody else. So I think, even if the parent does have a tendency to maybe get a little too excited or get too emotional. Because I mean, I've been in that boat before. I coached my oldest son, and man, the emotions run high, and it's tough to reel it back in no matter what, if that's your flesh and blood out there. And I think that's something important too. When you get to Pinnacle, like, I've never been around those guys at the highest level. You go to Super 32, and a kid loses a tough match, or maybe just checks out in a match and doesn't compete like he's supposed to. I've never seen a time where Paulson or Jared has gotten a kid's face and done something that I'm just like, wow, I've never seen that side of those guys before. And I guarantee you, if you ask their parents that are close to the club and travel with the club and involved in the club, it's part of the byproduct of the way they run their club and how they kind of create that culture there. Is like, okay, you can be a crazy parent, or you can be too emotional when your kid wrestles, but this isn't the place for you. You might want to go down the road to that other place where it's condoned or it's just not frowned upon. So I think part of the ownership is on the coaches to allow that or not allow that to happen. Now, a little bit easier said than done in some circumstances, because what's the amount of time I get with a kid in my club? 10 hours a week? How many hours are actually in a week when they're not with me and they're with their parents or another environment? And I can only affect so much. But if they're 10 hours a week in the room, and then we're 8-10 hours a week on the weekends, and I'm kind of in that monitoring type of role where they're in the room training and then they're in the gym competing, that's something that I could let go and be a disaster, or I can continue to reel in and coach the parents on how to be a good sports parent. And again, like, I'm still learning to this day. I got different personalities of kids coming in the room this season. I got different personalities of parents coming in this season, and I'm a different human being than I was last year. And there's days where, just like you do and everybody else, terrible day at work or something happened in your personal life, and then you got to go into a room full of kids and be the same guy that you were when you ran the best practice of your life on Tuesday, and it's now Wednesday and your world's falling apart. So I think some of that stuff, like, as a coaching staff, like, man, you're not only coaching the kids, you're coaching yourself, you're coaching the parents. You're trying to maintain the environment, and you're trying to maintain that environment everywhere you go. So the environment that I have in Pinnacle's room, if I'm Paulson and Lawrence, like, I got to have that same environment when we roll into Tulsa. Nothing changes. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times I think that's a little bit easier said than done, don't you?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny you brought up Kevin Masters. Man, that guy, I probably wouldn't have been a good youth coach without him. So you know how big I am on perspective, and perspective shapes everything, man. And we were coming back from Tulsa. It was either my first or second year taking a group out there. And, man, it's a long grinding day, and it's about an 11-hour drive back, and you're driving through the middle of the night. And I can't remember if I was driving or if Kevin was driving, but whichever way it was, we were keeping each other company and just talking. And part of what you talked about, like, trying to be in the responsibility of the coach, man, you got to have some hard conversations sometimes. And, man, I figured there was no better time than now to have that. So I started talking about some of the things I had seen and how I could help alleviate some of that. And he's like, well, let me stop you. I want to explain something to you. And I wish we would have recorded the conversation, because, man, it was an hour and a half of some of the best information I've gotten as a coach from a parent. And I'm not a parent, so I don't get the emotion. Like, I understand how big it can be, because I'm pretty emotional, the guys you get connected to. I can't imagine when it's on your own flesh and blood. Okay. No parent, at least that he would come up with, is trying to damage their kid. He's like, you don't understand what it's like to be a parent. The fear, the joy, all the emotions that it brings, and how big it is. So when your kid really gets into wrestling and he loves it more than anything, which his kid did, he loved wrestling and was really putting a lot into it.
Still loves it the same to this day.
He's like, you'll move mountains to get your kid anything they want. And that's just part of being a parent. That I'm not a parent, I don't get it. And so he's like, you don't know what to do for your kid to be successful as a wrestler. He's like, I'm not a wrestling coach. He's like, I was just barely a good high school wrestler. So you just start observing and you see something working over here with this parent and this kid and this coach. So like, okay, we're going to do that. And then, okay, we see something else working with this parent and this kid and this coach. So we're going to do that too. And before you know it, because of your concern and care and compulsion for your kid, your plate's so full and it's not sustainable. What you're doing, what you're putting your kid through. And he's like, it's not a rational thing because you're not rational in the love and affection that you have for your kid. So he's like, I know you think I'm a crazy parent and I'm hurting my kid's wrestling career, and I might be, but that's not my intention. He's like, I'm trying to do the best I can for my kid. And that's when I started understanding why you see parents so emotional and so involved and pushing so hard. It comes out of an irrational love they had for.
Yeah, I agree that to a certain extent.
So hold on, I'm not quite done yet. So that's when I understood what my role is. My role as a coach in the youth environment is to be the objective party. It's the guy that can step back and be unemotional and look at the future, the development of this kid, and help him achieve his goals. It's impossible for the parent to do that. Just like it's impossible for me to have the love and affection and support unwavering for this kid that the parent's going to have. They have to have both relationships to really get to a high level, in my opinion, at a sport. You have to have the unwavering support from someone. It doesn't have to be a biological parent. Some people aren't fortunate enough to have that, but there has to be somebody in their life that no matter what, you get pinned in 3 seconds. Little Johnny, you're awesome. I love you. You're the man. Look how good you looked in your singlet. And you also have to have somebody that's unbiased about the situation that can go, here's what we have to do to improve. Here's what we have to change. And here's what we're doing really well. And I realized that was my job, was to stay as unemotional as I possibly can be with these guys that I grew to love a whole lot. And it was a tough thing to do, but that was the role I had. And explaining that to parents, what my job was and how that there needed to be a parent and a coach involved for this kid to reach the level they wanted to be at. And you know me, man, I trained everybody that came in the door like they wanted to be a world champ. Because nobody comes in with that realistic goal, but later on down the road, they might decide to, and I don't want to waste any time with it. So that helped me understand that, man, these parents aren't evil, because that's a harsh word, and that's not the way I looked at it, but that's the word that comes to mind. This isn't some harm that's being done for a kid. It's too much love. And that really changed my perspective on what happens at these youth events and the parents that I was just getting a bad taste in my mouth on. And it really increased the desire for me to help. Nobody's trying to hurt, at least not many people are. I'm sure there's some bad people out there that are, but most people are just trying to help too much. So that was the other point I wanted to come on and really talk about too, that, man, when you see this parent that's really involved and really emotional and sometimes mean, it's really coming from a place of love than it is anger and hate and all that. It's fear. It's all the insecurity. It's not being able to get your kid to the level you want them to be at. And that just helped me understand the parent athlete dynamic so much better, where I'm not a parent myself. And I'm forever grateful to Kevin for sharing that with me and being so honest, because it really, man, it took me to a new level as a youth coach, because I was able to view the athlete through their parents' eyes and really understand what was going on. And when you understand it, you can start coming up with some solutions on how to fix things and make it a little bit better. That's my Kevin Masters story. So Masters, if you listen to this, you're the man. I appreciate all the help you gave me through the years. Miss our talks when I was mopping the mats. Had good times with those.
Yeah, man, that guy's dumped so much knowledge into me, just real world knowledge and perspective. I think that's the biggest thing is just perspective. And while you were getting deep on us, the man Fellers pops in.
Keep going. I like it.
Yeah. So, but I want to get your perspective on this too, because and one of the things I mentioned a little bit earlier is, you know, in different parts of the country, the expectations might be a little bit different. And in different environments, the expectations might be a little different. So private training facility versus volunteer dad at a USA club. that dynamic. And then we were kind of talking about Pinnacle and just the environment that they've created. And it just seems like this super fun. Everybody's in a good mood. Like there's no negativity and things. And we're just picking that club because they're an extremely high level club. There's a lot of high level clubs around. But they're starting to be kind of the gold standard, especially in the youth world. And like I was telling Roper, like I've never seen either one of them like pull a kid aside and get in his grill or like, you know, really see anything negative. And we're talking about managing environments and managing cultures. You've been in the game for a minute. You've coached some extremely high level kids from youth all the way up through. What's your perspective on just the youth wrestling culture in general and that parent dynamic?
First of all, I mean, Pinnacle and Brandon and Jared do, and Mac and everybody else, they do a great job. I think no matter if it's a local, you know, school club that's, you know, run through the school versus, you know, up to a Pinnacle or anywhere in between. For me, it's like anything probably, you know, Roper with your guys' team or, you know, business or, you know, Compound down with you, Cliff, or even on a camp, it's like whoever's establishing what the standards are and the guidelines of the program, right? What you stand for, what's expected behavior, what the athletes and the parents can expect from the coaches and what the coaches expect. And no matter who it is, top to bottom, I don't care if it's a kid that just walks through the door or, you know, your best kid on the team, regardless, right? Everybody in that environment is held to the same standard. I think that's, for me, like just watching from afar. And then on my, you know, when my kids is in, you know, in the heat of of everything, which some days it's really challenging as well. And sometimes I have to set myself back, but that goes back to what you were talking about, Roper's like, okay. I mean, if you've got parents in the room, right? I'm a big component in just personally being a parent and being involved in practice, got back in practice a little bit ago, is I see sometimes I'm looking at the other end of the room and my son's, you know, at that time, I'm like, oh, you know, and sometimes open my mouth, sometimes I don't. But, you know, I read an article, I think USA Wrestling put out about the ride home, and the kids coming to practice, their parents sit there and watch. They're looking, I mean, they know when they have a crappy practice or not having a crappy practice, right? And now they have the ride home, their parents sit there and watch it. I mean, I think not having the parents involved in practice, and I think the ability to have a trust and a bond between the parent, from the coach and the athlete, and if the parent wants involved. See, I think the trifecta is, and I think I've heard, you know, Izzy said this before, like he forces the parents and the kids to have conversations versus the parent going to the coach about the kid and triangulating and basically breaking the trust bond between the coach and the athlete. Like it's a weakening of the bond, but coming full circle, like, you know, that I think so. First of all, I think keeping the standard, whatever you stand for, principles, top to bottom. You know, you've brought your kid to a club, and okay, let's talk at the high end, like a Pinnacle. You've trusted those coaches and whoever they have on staff to coach your kid, right? Obviously, you think they can put your kid in a good position. Then let the coaches coach your kid. Don't be on the floor. Don't be yelling from the front. Don't be putting the bad thoughts in your kid's head. Oh, you got so and so and this. That. I mean, all that can do. They're there to be a parent and try to feed as much positive energy as you can, because as we all know, this is a grueling sport. There's very, very highs, very, very lows. It can all happen within 2 hours with each other. And then the other thing is, you know, self-reflection from a coaching standpoint is, you know, you gotta, you know, why are you doing it? You know, and I think there's every end of the spectrum. I was looking up some stats yesterday, and, you know, I think from high school participation, 280,000 kids participate on an annual basis. As we know, 1% of those go to college. I think it's like 1%. Is that right?
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah.
So 1%, and the average tenure and this is just high school, I think it was like 7 to 12 actually, is 1.9 years their time within the sport, right? So where I've kind of got lately is, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but for me, just kind of looking at the stats, and I run a Monday night at the local town club with got 40 kids that are freaking, I mean, as green, and barely tie their shoes, but every time they walk out of there, I'm making sure that they think they can take on the world, up to helping sometimes with some, some up to high schoolers, they're top ranked in the country, all the way down to, third, fourth graders think that they're on top of the world until they get ate up, and then you got to try to build them back up. But all that being said is like, if the average tenure is 1.9, 2 years in the sport, I've kind of got to the point like, okay, and I'm simplifying this. It's just for an example. I tell the parents, like, teach your kids to wrestle is the easy part. The hard part is, what kind of person, what's their work ethic? Are they a good teammate? Are they respectful? Do they listen? Are they committed? Because if all the character elements, if they walk through the door with all the good character elements that we all fight every day, no matter what level, sometimes coaching, right? Then they're probably going to be good, pretty coachable. They're probably committed, and be willing to learn the sport of wrestling and the dynamics of it. But if I had a kid tonight at practice, it's like you want to blame everybody for everything. I say, listen, from Tulsa to here to it's always everybody else's fault, right? And I can only impact them. I can impact these kids' lives. Some of them, I have a 2-year window, right? So whatever I can try to keep that 2-year window going on, I try to just freaking, as bad as it is, like, they don't have much positive. I mean, these kids know, and they're really self-reflection and all the social media out there. They have a lot of doubt in their mind every day. And even the ones that walk around like they're King Kong, they still have a lot of doubt, right? So I try to build them as much as I can. And I guess you could say brainwash them, but also believe in them. But the biggest thing is I've made a conscious effort to have relationships with the kids outside the room, text them, call them.
I think that's huge.
And I think, okay, if I'm asking, Roper, like on the college front, right? I'm sure some of the guys get the most out of it. And I say this about high school all the time. People are like, oh, with the high school team. Well, if the coaches only wants the most out of the kids, are all in, you got to be so committed. And the only conversation or relationship they have with the kids is from the first day of school or the season starts to the last day of the state tournament. And they've got no relationship inside. It's very transactional or minimal between there. I'm supposed to expect everything out of these guys, but I'm not putting anything into them either. Right. I mean, really, it all comes back to standard relationships, honestly. I mean, that's easy and like real simplified. How committed are you as a leader, right, to get your troops to buy into what you're, and then the biggest thing that, like the club and the competitive club is that you've got to also then delegate, and there's got to be kids that stand up and are leaders, because I think sometimes they rely too much on the coach to tell them what to do, or it's very transactional, order driven, and it's not each other holding each other accountable. Right. And
I think that's different. I think that's different environments too. I would venture to guess that some of the, I don't even want to say more successful clubs, but I would venture to guess that the clubs that tend to exist longer, and we're talking about longevity, and that's something that, way back in the day when me.
So what's success? So let me stop you for a second, Fred. What's it also comes back to setting the standard for what does success look like for your club, right?
I think for me, and that's our mission statement, core values is bottom line, to have a positive impact on our athletes and everything they do. Nothing about when we started the compound and what we wanted to achieve. Yeah, we wanted to have state champs and national champs, Super 32, and all these Division I wrestlers like that. That kind of went without saying. But like at our core, when the dust settled, if we started with a fishbowl and ended with a fishbowl, what at our core were we trying to impact? And that was to have a positive impact on every aspect of our athletes' lives. And
very rare. That's awesome, but also very, very rare, right?
Hold on, I wanna jump in a little bit too, because this is probably a misconception about me because I don't talk about it a lot. Winning is very important.
Yeah, of course, that's fun, right?
It's very important. Like, you will have an impact on a kid's life teaching them how to win and be successful. It is part of it. You have to compete and go after something. And that's a big misconception about me, because I am as far away from transactional coaching as I can get.
Yep.
But part of the reason I do that is when I believe in it and it works. And man, I'm competitive, and Cliff, so are you. So it's kind of like we're so competitive. It's like waking up and worrying about breathing. It just doesn't make sense to us. But the whole reason you get into sports in the first place when everybody's really honest, is to win. That is why people are coming in the door. Now, they'll stay in the door because you have a positive impact in the kid's life. But the reason they come into practice to begin with is to try and be good at something. And that's not every single person, because you can't generalize. There's always I just want my kid to be involved, or I want to get him off the couch. But most of the reasons people get involved with sports is to win something. And that was really important to me, and still is. It's one of the reasons I work pretty hard at this, because, man, I can build good relationships. My parents raised me really well, and I have good core values, and I've still got to work on those and make sure they don't change, but I get that part down. A lot of the extra work comes into being really good at this. And when we go to Tulsa, we bring home some trophies. Not that it's important because it's Tulsa and it's a national title, but because that's what we're doing. And if we're doing it, we're going to do it really well. And that was something instilled from me from my dad. I was big into baseball. I didn't start wrestling late. I was travel baseball all over the place.
Oh, man, that's just as bad or worse, right?
And I remember at a really young age, my dad sitting down and talking to me about competition, that, yes, you really enjoy baseball and it's a fun activity for you. But when it's time to play a game, you got to try and play to win. And there's a right way to win, and there's a way to win with character. And those things are really important to our family. And just like you talked about, whatever the standard is for whatever team or club you go to, there's some standards that's expected, and you got to uphold those standards. But winning's important.
100%.
I don't want to leave that out and glance that over, because I think that's a common misconception about me, that I don't care about winning. No, I care a whole lot about winning. Like I said, I coach every kid to want to be a world champ, because if they do, then we started on the right page. And it's not, the kid won't have that goal coming in. I've not been around any kid that really believes that they can be the best in the world at something. That has to be fostered from someone else. That has to start with a spark from someone else that believed in them. And that's what I thought one of my roles was, to be that spark, to tell the kids, you know what? I don't know if you can be a world champ, but we dang sure can try our best to go see if we can do it.
100%. I think that's the role as a coach, is like, and that's the beauty of it. And why I think I can say, watching from afar, you guys interact, is that's the addiction that we all chase, is the ability to pull something out of a kid that they don't know that they have, and make them believe that they can be the world champ, or believe in a vision. That's the success of being a coach. Does that come with winning? Of course. I mean, I agree with you 100%, Roper. Like, the winning part, or trying to win, I think that's like, I'm going to say the price of admission, or a given walking through the door, right? But I think you're right. There's a lot of people say, oh, you got to just have fun and develop. And then when they're 8th grade, well, you don't just start to learn to compete like you said about your dad or whatever when you're 13 years old, right?
Right.
It's not like
I think that's the difference, though. I think just like you learn how to move in your stance, and you learn how to crawl before you can walk. I think the misconception of the journey, but the process from I don't know how to wrestle at all to I want to go to a tournament and win. The middle point is learning how to compete. And I think, from my perspective, like right now, I'm going through a transition. I have a bunch of middle school wrestlers in there. It's got a huge influx of middle school wrestlers. Almost all of them are first-year wrestlers. And they work pretty hard, and they pay attention pretty good. But, like, my biggest thing with them this season is just teaching them how to compete in the room, right? So when they go to a tournament, they understand how to compete. The byproduct of going into a tournament and competing and feeling prepared and feeling like they can be a world champ is gonna be winning. And from my perspective, I think that takes away that, oh, I went to the tournament and I didn't win, so I'm not getting better in practice. That's the big slippery slope that everybody faces. I didn't win, but I didn't do exactly what I set out to do at the tournament this weekend, so I'm not getting better in the room. And focusing more on, did I go and compete? Did I compete hard in every position? Was I trying to win every position? Was I trying to score in every position? Yeah, I did. Okay, so I am getting better. I'm learning how to compete. And then when the technique catches up, then I'll be able to win more. But I agree. I just, from my perspective, especially at a young age, and all those middle school parents are like, Cook, what should we be doing at home? Can I do something extra? Should I buy a home mat? And all these dads are admittedly know nothing about wrestling. And like to your point earlier when you were talking, Roper, about Kevin Masters just with unconditioned wanted to do everything he could for his kid to get good at wrestling so he could win wrestling matches because it's fun. You understand that. And these dads are coming to me like, what can we do extra? What can we do extra? What can we do extra? And part of me is like, dude, I love the fact that you want your kid to do extra work outside of here. But the other part of me is like, hey, you just started coming 2 months ago. Let's not eat, sleep, and breathe, train in wrestling right now to where he doesn't want to come to our facility and get better and heal. So like, what are the kind of the stopping points of the things along the way that eventually end up being one? Or is it just, hey, day one, I'm going to teach you how to win. And these are the things in the box that everybody has to do to win, and that's what we're going to focus on. And if we go to a tournament, we don't win, we're going to come back and focus on those until we get to the tournament and win. And I think that's where a lot of times in this privatized sports world, like if we're not winning, that means we're not getting better in practice.
I think
that's scary.
I think it's the human. I seen your post about, and I'm gonna bring it full circle, but I think our human nature is we want everything, we want it now, right? So like, you order on Amazon, you expect it in 2 days. If you order something else that's not 2 days, you want to hear. I think, we want success. We want success for our kids as quick as we can. That's why, like, Roper, we got it's probably not as much as in Georgia, but like, how many clubs are just in Iowa, right? Yeah. So if you're not winning at this club, we're going to jump over here because this, like, you've got like, people just searching that quick fix, and ultimately, like, I think that's as much. I've seen kids like Aiden Valencia. I'm sure you guys have heard of him, right? From California. He won 15U. Like, he was always second, third. Drake, for a long time. Drake Aiello only won one little kid's state tournament. He was always second, third, whatever. Sometimes I think being too successful too early isn't a good thing.
I agree with you there 100%.
Brody Teske never won a little kid state tournament. Not one.
I agree with you because the most undefeated thing in youth wrestling is the kids that mature early. That beats good coaching. That beats good technique. That beats it all. The guy who starts hitting puberty is going to win just because they've got more testosterone than the other guy they're wrestling. Didn't get to coach as many young girls, just a few, but I would imagine it'd be the same way with them, that the girls
probably more, yeah.
The girls that mature early, they're going to have a little bit more success. And then I think that goes back to the coach's role too. So, I mean, I hear it all the time, and you see it on social media where the blame gets pushed off on the parent. It's the coach's fault. If the youth wrestling world's unhealthy, it's the people that are involved, the coaches. It's our job to have the tough conversations. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get on here, so we could have a conversation and put out our opinions about there, because it's some people that have done it fairly well, in my opinion, that what we've seen, and start balancing out that conversation a little bit and encourage more people to have it, because you're 100% right. And you guys talked about, I've had a trouble talking about winning with me and putting it the right way. And it's not the win that's important. It's the act of trying to win. I like that word, the phrase that you both used. That's what's really important and what I want to impart in the guys I work with. It doesn't matter if you win or not. It truly doesn't. It's not going to change your life a whole lot outside of a very few matches that you wrestle that can be life-changing. But the fact that you're going out and trying to win might be the most important thing that you learn through this sport, even more than humility or toughness or anything else, because you guys know as well as I do, they're going to be competing for the rest of their life, whether that's a certain college they want to go to, or the guy or the girl that they want to date in English class, to the job they want to get one day. They're going to be competing forever. And they have to learn how to go out and put themselves out and not take a step back and shy away from, I might fail at this, that I'm really going to go try to win and put something at stake and risk it. So I don't want to shy away from the win-loss discussion, but you guys help me to talk about it a little bit better and explain what I really feel about it. I mean, and if you're in sport, try and win it, right? That's the whole outcome and why you keep score. I'm not a fan of everybody needs to feel good after every single match or every single game. No, that's a life lesson you need to learn at a really young age, because life doesn't care about when it's going to teach you hard lessons. And I don't like it as much as everybody does that some young kids have to learn hard lessons, but they do. That's just the facts of life. And I don't know if it's ever too young to start having a kid face those disappointments and face that success the same way. It can turn a kid the wrong way by being too successful, like you talked about, too early. So I don't think it's ever too young to have those guys learn those lessons. And it's up to us to make sure you foster them and make sure they turn into positive things in their life. Whether it's negative in the moment, it turns around to something that helps them to grow. Whether it is a win or a loss, tough practice, getting your butt kicked, getting yelled at by your coach, that's part of it too, man. Like,
let me ask you guys something. And maybe Roper, even at the college level now for you, is, have you ever went to a tournament and maybe not publicly say this and you maybe not say it now, you're like, a kid wins the tournament and, or is having a lot of success, but their work ethic in the room, how they go about it, what kind of example you set, you're hoping they get knocked off, because for two reasons. Number one is to maybe open their eyes that they're open to some feedback and change how they're going about it. But number two is that you don't want the rest of your athletes around them to start leading astray. We've all got kids that are just maybe naturally gifted, that probably don't do all the things to lead by example in the room, that don't set the example that you want, but are having success. How have you guys dealt with that maybe inside your club before? You understand what I'm saying?
100%. I talk about it a lot, that, man, talent exists, whatever words you want to use for it, ability, whatever, man. There's some people that have an advantage, whether you're faster, stronger, if that means you played outside more as a kid, whatever. There's people that have advantages coming in.
Or God just blessed you as a winner.
Yeah, like that. And some people have an advantage, and that's what really wins. So we talk about it all the time, especially at the college level too, because we demand so much of these guys. And I talked about it a ton at the club, and Cliff can testify. I never talked about winning a whole lot. That's just the way we went about it. That, man, we were going to try and do well, because that was just every practice, every day. We're going to do it as well as we could. But you don't work hard to win. You don't live well to win, because that doesn't necessarily work. We've all been a part of that. The guy I'm thinking of a guy right now, been around for over 10 years. He didn't have near the success when his career ended that he wanted to have. And he was one of the hardest working, most dedicated, driven guys I've ever been around. That doesn't guarantee you're going to have success. And sometimes it doesn't even tilt the odds in your favor. You work hard because it's the right thing to do, and you can. You have the ability to work hard. So the analogy I use with the college guys, for it to make sense, because when I start talking about it, they don't get it until you bring this up. It's like when you're a little kid and your parents talk to you about being nice to someone. You don't do it for the reward, right? You don't do it to get something from them. You don't do it to get recognized. You do it because it's the right thing to do. So just like treating someone well is the right thing to do, and you don't do it for any kind of reward, the same thing goes with working hard. You don't work hard for a reward. You work hard because you can, and it's just the right thing to do. And then what I like to tie into that, and Cliff will tell you this is one of my passion projects, is fulfillment, pride. Again, whatever word you want to use for it, it's not talked about enough. That's what we're really all looking for. All we're really looking for is some happiness and fulfillment at the end of the day. And depending on what your beliefs are, man, I think God created us this way, that at the end of a hard day's work, we're proud of it. Some good chemicals, the endorphins, oxytocin, all that drops in our body, and it makes us feel really good. And I don't think that's talked enough about, that there is pride in doing something really well and really hard, and do it just for that reason. To have pride in yourself that you can commit 100% to it. And I think that helps take a little bit of the pressure off, because that's what most of college is about, alleviating pressure for these guys. That, man, just because you work so hard and dedicate your life to it doesn't mean that you're owed anything. Doesn't mean the sport's going to give it back to you.
100%.
And again, I'm very lucky that my dad talked to me about those things, and I was prepared to really go after something and keep pretty decent balance on it. But I think that message needs to be spread more, and something that I talk about a ton to every athlete I get involved with. You work hard for the fulfillment you get at the end of the day, not to stand at the top of the podium, not to get your name on the wall. It's because it's the right thing to do, and you can. because there's other people that can't, that want to, and it's your responsibility to do it because you have the ability to, period, point. That's it.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's, me and you are both huge Gary Vee fans, and I mean, we even talked about that before the Gary Vee revolution kind of started. It's like the biggest, like, scariest thing in the sport of wrestling, because it's so tough, because it demands so much physically, mentally, lifestyle, sacrifice, everything, and a lot of times returns so little competitively. And that's where the connection of, did I win? Did I get the gold medal? No, I didn't. Like me, I never won a state title. But like, man, I'm sure I didn't do everything right, but that's all I did. That's all I did was work, train, and try to get the best trainer and try to get the best partners and drive to wherever I could to work out. And it just didn't pan out for me. But like, at the time, if you asked me, a week after the state tournament my senior year, like, did I feel like, did I have pride in a job well done? I would probably say some very horrible stuff to you and basically tell you to go away. Looking back on it, down the road, man, like that made me who I am now. That made me the coach I am. That made me the father. That made me the husband. So you can't paint that correlation. We can try, but I can't paint a correlation to a middle school kid. Hey, dude, when you're 42, you're going to look back on this and you're going to be proud of the fact that you worked this hard. And I understand where you come from. I'm not trying to play devil's advocate. I'm just saying that pride, that job well done, like to just say, hey, we got to have pride in a job well done, versus having the tools to explain that and analogies, and correlations and stuff like that to hammer that home. That is something completely lost on what's going on. Completely lost on what's going on in sports. I agree with you 100%. But we're such a win-driven society. We're such a Johnny has to win this weekend because I got to make the Facebook post with him on the podium, the medal around his neck. Like, that has to happen. And if he doesn't, like, not that I'm embarrassed as a parent, but I'm disappointed that I didn't get to share in his enjoyment. And I'll put myself in the bad parent role here for a second. And you witnessed it because you were coaching at a different high school, and my oldest son was from the three. And in a nutshell, he didn't start wrestling until he was in 7th grade. Never thought he would wrestle. Came in and butterfly going to wrestling. I was like, oh my God, I've been wrestling for 3+ years. Immediately jumped back into it. Not crazy fan, because in the back of my mind, I didn't expect Anthony to really like it and stick with it long term. Then he got kind of good. Started getting halfway decent at the end of the day for a year. And he leave and blah, blah, blah. That summer, I'm like, okay, now it's time to really train. Now it's time for me to get really involved. Started planning stuff out. We're going to get good. Freshman year, he's going to start. His high school committee is coming through. He's legendary coach, one of the best coaches ever in Georgia. And he's going to be good. He's going to be a contributing member of his team. The minute he got good or showed me the potential that he could be really good, I put expectations on stuff. And I think that's where parents have a tough time distinguishing between the process of them learning and growing as a human being through the sport of wrestling or whatever sport they're doing, and continuing to be the supportive role of the parent, and then pouring over into the, I know your potential, I know what you're capable of, you're not flesh and blood, I gave birth to you, so this is what we're going to do, and I know best. And then from that point on, it spirals out of control, and you watched it. With me and my oldest son, up until about the middle of his junior year, it spiraled out of control because I wanted my kid to be the best kid in the country. And even going back to the Kevin Masters analogy, I was willing to do everything I could, but I had blinders on because I knew what was best for him. And I was going to make it happen. I didn't bother consulting Anthony if he wanted to make it happen. If he was driven to make it happen, it was just kind of a, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do it at the highest level. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a lot of, and I lived it. Thank God my old man slapped me into reality, and I made some changes his senior year and somewhere in between, and it ended up being a much better situation. But he was really good at that point. So it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't that hard. But that's where I think a lot of times parents have problems, and that's where I had a problem, you know? And I think a lot of people think that I had it figured out for a long time. No, I didn't. I was an extremely overbearing, bad parent that also was an assistant coach at the high school my kid was at. So there was never a escape for it. It was 24/7 lesson. It was 24/7. We're going to be great. And a lot of times I didn't bother to consult my kid if he wanted to get on that greatness train and ride it till the wheels fall off. You know, so I think a lot of times that, okay, we can be good. Oh, wow, he's starting to grow. Oh, we won a couple tournaments. And then the switch gets flipped and it's wide open. You know, that's, and me and you've had this talk before, and I was super gun shy. You know, and I did things completely different with Cameron when he started wrestling. He probably didn't get near as much potential out of Cameron that I did, or that he even wanted. But to me, it was one of those situations where, man, I would much rather it be all driven by him and under as a support, rather than me take the wheel and risk being too much, because I have all the answers. And I really, you know, with Anthony, I really care. You know, so coming from a parent's perspective and being a club coach and kind of mentoring some of these parents through that process, I mean, I have a different perspective than you have. And not that my perspective is right and your perspective is wrong. I just think experiences create different perspectives. And I think my perspective and your perspective are kind of close. But again, like, I'm hypersensitive to that win thing, because I've seen what it's done to me as a parent. The minute my kids started winning on a regular basis, I was like, oh, here we go. We're about to win this whole thing next year. You know what I'm saying?
I think it comes back to like coaches and parents. It's like, you know, how many times do you hear coaches, especially at youth, or parents talking for their kid? Like, well, yeah, he really wants to do this and he's got a goal of this year. Well, does he really? Or is that your goal that you're trying to get him to believe in? You know what I mean? And it comes back to like, I was victim of this. And I think, you know, Roper, you probably say the same thing. You see this all the time in colleges. Like, in college, it really comes out. If you don't, I tell kids this all the time. If you don't truly love, love wrestling to the highest degree when you walk onto a college campus, I don't care where it is in the country. If you don't love it, and you're oh shit, I got to go to practice, and if you don't love it, it'll eat you alive, right? I mean, it'll eat you alive. And I think the same thing happens does the kid really want to go, or are you trying to live vicariously through the kid? And it comes back to like, Roper, I've heard you say this a lot of times. It comes back to, you know, are you worried about the now, or are you worried about, you know, if you're developing and you're seeing visible gains or things to improve in, that may be success first. Yeah, we all want to win, right? But fact is, not everybody's going to win every time. And going back to the success thing, you know, like athletes, I seen a quote Gable had. Of course, he has some good quotes in his day. A couple lucky things came. Someone must have sent him a note, but someone asked him like how he measures, you know, he views as his most successful wrestlers. And he had a very, very unique quote, of course, from a very, very unique and unbelievable human being. Because he said, I measure a wrestler's success on the 5 years they wrestled and on the next 50. And I think that's like pretty, for me, that's pretty deep. And I'd probably say dead on, right? Like if a kid wins 4 state titles for you or 4 national titles, and then the minute he walks off campus, right, he's a shithead and, you know, doesn't set a good example or do things the right way, or didn't do it right way. Like, is that still something success because he won? I mean, I think a lot of that's when I was talking about keeping the standard and holding everybody accountable. I think sometimes winning and success, both coach, athlete, and parent, allows us to maybe fudge on some things that we say we stand for, but winning kind of leads us off course by some of our actions and truly what we stand for. So winning is the devil sometimes too, right? I mean, it's
a disease, and most people that have done it at a pretty high level fall into that trap. It's an addiction. You can get addicted to it just like money or success or fame or notoriety or any of those things. Because it does become a little bit, I'll tell you what the balancing act is now that I got it. Like, it can't become your identity. That's when it becomes a trap for me.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Like, you're trying to seek validation that you've made it because you've won, and you're seeking, validation or what, feedback from your peers that, oh man, that guy, he won. So all these people say I'm great. Not if that's your fulfillment, then sooner or later
we've all witnessed it though.
We've all done it, right? We've all done it.
Well, not me because I didn't win very much, but what I'm saying.
So you got that negative talking coming out of your mouth right now. I might get off.
Well, so coaches and parents can also fall victim to their identity being about their athletes.
Oh, 1,000%.
I think we all fall into, any successful person falls into it at some point. Like, I'm looking at that CMP logo that's on your screen right now, Cliff. There was a point where I know both of us that became our identity. And that's the trap, because, man, I've dedicated my life to wrestling to the point where my wife and I are probably not going to have kids, and we're making some big decisions because I'm a crazy wrestling coach. And I love this sport and want to have an impact in a really healthy way, I think, at least, to it. But, man, I'm still not, that's not who I am. I'm Lee Roper. I'm not a wrestling coach. That's not who I am. That's not my identity. I've got things inside of me that have nothing to do with wrestling that make me a better wrestling coach. And that's really the important thing, that core value identification and self-reflection, which is another thing I think kids need to be taught as they're coming up through. And I think going after something at a really high level gives you a chance to do that. And just a little perspective on where I come from with most things. So one of the callings I have in my life is to work with, I don't know the right word, high-end, successful, really good kids, because I think they're underserved. Like, you see kids that are winning a lot and have their act together and making good grades, they get ignored a lot. And it's the kid that's struggling and getting in trouble. Oh, he needs the help. Well, the guy that's successful needs just as much help too. Just because his standard of what's acceptable for his life is different from someone else's doesn't mean they don't need guidance and support just as much as the guy that's just barely making it through life every day. And, man, I think that the high end of sports is underserved from people really trying to help guys grow. And that's where my calling is, and maybe why I ended up in college wrestling. Because it is, I mean, it's part of your job's winning. It really does come down to your win-loss record mattering a little bit for your job and keeping it, not as much as football, so to speak, but it does start to matter more to where you can impart these life lessons and really go after being the best in the world too. You don't have to separate them. And
let me ask you something, Roper, then.
I see that discussion happen a lot, and it doesn't have to. Like, you can try to be the best at something and still make it such a healthy, positive environment. And you can work kids really, really hard and demand so much from them and be a tough SOB and make them have discipline, and there be consequences when they're not, and it still be a really healthy place for them to come in and grow. Like, you don't have to separate the two.
Let me ask you something. You said that. Yeah. If you had like a, coaching top 10, at a sports center, and you've had all spectrums from youth all the way up, what would you say your top, if you had like that fulfillment you're trying to fill through coaching and impacting, what would be your top moment you'd say right now in your coaching career?
My top moment,
were you you feel like, wow, this is like the best feeling or moment as a coach?
I was deciding between two. I got it. So Taylor Lujan, a guy I've been around for a long time, and man, you want to talk about a tough relationship to keep coach athlete. I've been around that dude for 11 years, and he is like family to me. So he's
a tough. Speaking of tough SOBs.
Yeah, he is, man. He puts beating on me quite a bit. But anyway, the thing I'm most proud of is Taylor and I were just talking about how many times we've been in each other's corner, and the highs and the lows and the roller coasters and the being mad at each other and happy and all that. And he's like, man, the one thing that I can definitely say from you being involved in my wrestling career is you've made this a healthier thing for me. He's like, I probably at this point would be really bitter about wrestling. I mean, he hadn't had the success he probably should have in college in that 3-day national tournament. I mean, he's had some letdowns there, but man, he's really proud of the person he is and how he still looks at the sport and still enjoys it and loves it. And he gave me a lot of credit for that. So I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, that I help this journey he's been on. And that's a dude that's chased it at a really high level and is going to continue to. He's got Olympic aspirations after he's done. Make it a really healthy thing.
And he should have Olympic. He's that tough.
And it's been a positive experience for him, even with a lot of setback and not accomplishing some of the stuff he wants to. So him giving me a little bit of that credit, man, is probably my proudest moment in coaching I've had so far.
That's awesome. If you asked him 11 years ago and you started on the journey from him though, and said, okay, you're going to be at a D1 school, you're going to do this, like, you know, at that time when you started 11 years ago, would he thought you're crazy or that's success? You know, sometimes it's also, you know, I had a kid tonight. It's like, okay, if I told you 5 years ago you've achieved all this stuff, would you believe me? Like, well, no. Well, so I think sometimes these kids don't give themselves. It's always easy to focus on what we didn't do or what we didn't achieve. They don't ever sit back and reflect on, you know, the successes that they have on a daily basis either, which, you know,
do some
it's a hard exercise.
When you were 15 years old, and do you think you'd have had the success to the point you've had it now in your life?
No, never.
Right. So you don't know unless you try. And that's one of the big things I try and do, especially with the young guys I'm going to get them around, is dream big. There's too much play safe. There's too much, whoa, slow down. There's too much, whoa, man, like, let's take this thing slow. Like, no, like, start dreaming about being the best in the world at something. It's okay. And it's okay if you don't get there. It's okay if you don't even come close. Like I say, you guys you put a good phrase in my head. It's the trying that's the important part. Trying to be the best at something is really important, and it's a skill I think's left out a lot. One, because it's really hard and it demands a lot, and there's going to be a lot of heartache, and there's only one guy that's the best in the world in your weight class, so odds are that's probably not going to be you. But the fact that you're willing to go after it anyway, and that may be why I'm in coaching. That may be why I've got such a big passion for this, because, man, I've been on that journey since I started wrestling, and I'm still on that journey. I'm still trying to chase the personal greatness that I'm trying to achieve. And will I ever get there? I don't know. And the older I get, the less I care, and the more I care about that I'm in the act of trying to do it.
Well, I mean, you mentioned self-reflection. You mentioned, self-awareness. Unbelievably undervalued skill, and it goes a lot of different ways, right? We talk about, man, where you train, everything fell in place all season, and then, man, look at Lujan, and man, they're just breaking my heart, and I'm all the way down here. I'm not up there, so it's even tougher for me, to be that distant and to watch that. But then, like you said, man, just taking a step back and just being like, I remember the baby deer with 4 left hooves that walked into our room, and I was just like, this kid just doesn't know even how to jog right, and then fast forward to the not only the wrestler he is now, but the human being, but also being able to do that on a personal level is something that's an unbelievably undervalued skill for kids, and it could be something simple for the younger guys and something more deep for the older guys. But man, and that's something that me and you have had a long conversation about. I constantly try to instill in our guys in our club is just and I just told them last week because they got area last weekend and got sections in the state, and I'm just like, you guys, after you get done warming up at that area turn, go find a quiet place for about 30 seconds. And think about the person you were, for you guys that are not a freshman. But even if you are a freshman, think about that wrestler and that human being you were this time last year, this time last year, the freshman, this time last year, whatever. And just appreciate how far you've come in 365 days. And that should give you that good feeling to where when that whistle blows in that first match, you got it in the back of your mind that you've done the work, that you're a better person, that you're a better wrestler. That's not talked about enough. It's always what's next, like you said. What's next? What's next tournament? What's next match? What's next practice? only going to continue to grow, and that's great to be hungry. But man, the motivation level and the ability to strive to go get that greatness, man, you got to put some gas on that fire and reflecting and having that ability to be aware, not only of the bad stuff. I think a lot of times people talk about self-awareness and it's like, oh, what are the things I got to fix? You know, it's like, how about I self-reflecting? Think about the badass stuff I did this week. You know what I'm saying? The single leg or the position I've been struggling in that I finally figured out, or, you know, the class that I've gone into with a bad attitude every day this school year that I went in with a good attitude and actually learned something great. I think those are undervalued things that coaching and athletes can work on as well. I think that long term, like you said, when you're wrestling, when you got family and that job and that stuff, I think that makes a huge difference. And it's not just when it's in high school, it's like talking to people about it. I mean, we talk about that again. Maybe they don't get it on the level they want to, but they're hearing it. You know what I'm saying? They're hearing it. I think there's a piece of people, you know, they be young athletes. And that's a life skill. That's not a wrestling skill, but man, it could be
that's all learned though too, I think. I mean,
100%.
The mental side of it, and I've heard a lot, you know, you heard a lot of like, oh, you got to get more mentally tough, or you got to get tougher, like, or you got to focus. And we, you know, there's a lot of cliche words that get thrown around, you know, not just in the sport, but in life. Like, okay, what does focus mean? Like, it tells you, oh, you got to focus. Well, what's focus? They don't, what's getting tough mean? Roper, I know you're a big reader as well. I am. I read a book 2-3 weeks ago. I'd recommend it to any coach out there or anybody. It's called by Jason Selk. It's called 10-Minute Toughness. And it's a 5-step mental workout, a daily mental workout that talks about, like, you know, that you actually, it's abnormal to be mentally tough, right? It's normal to have all the problems you think about, not come with solutions. And it's got steps in there, but a couple of them, Cliff, to what you're talking about, where's like, what's your performance statement? What's your personal highlight reel? You know, what's your identity statement? And then it talks about, you know, every day you have a success log. Like, what are the 3 things I've done? And it really comes back to the product goal. Like, okay, Lujan wants to be an Olympic champ or make an Olympic team or whatever his, you know, ultimate goal is for the sport. Well, then you have product goals. So he wants to be NCAA champ. Okay. What are the process? You know, we all say process and everybody uses it, but what are the process goals that's going to get you there, right? And you write them down. I read in the book that, you know, you have a 9-time, if you write down your goals on a daily basis, you have a 9-time more. It's basically 900% more likely to achieve that goal than if you don't. To write down your goals on a daily basis, 900%, 9 times more likely to. It's like scientifically proven. Like, why 900% advantage? Or like, why wouldn't you do it? There's just, you know, it's easy to fall into the rhetoric. And I think with sometimes, you know, and Cliff, I sent you that thing, and this is going to go off on that thing about King Tone. And, you know, it's easy sometimes to brainwash ourselves or lie to ourselves. But, you know, if you look at yourself in the mirror every day and you're honest with that person that you see, sometimes that's the most important workout, right? And hold yourself accountable. And then, you know, you guys are building great culture right now and have been building, and it's the fruits of labor coming, you know, in Cedar Falls. But that's, you know, athletes holding each other accountable and everybody trying to raise the bar. But, you know, being mentally tough or, you know, tough, whatever you want to say, focus, all that. That's all the stuff we're talking all physical, and that's kind of maybe deep, but that's all stuff that you have to work on a daily basis too. It's easy to throw in the freaking towel, everybody. And I told our club coach, and I'm like, listen, it's easy to point out what these kids are doing wrong, right? I don't think they're not trying to do it wrong on purpose. And I said, if someone followed me around for 24 hours a day and kept a log of all the things that I maybe didn't do 100% or whatever, right? And then I would help myself accountable. You know, these kids aren't robots. You know, there's a lot of things going on in their life that you may not know about that's impacting their effort or their focus or whatever. So, you know, us as coaches too, we got to live it, not just preach it too. And I think that's super, super important. Lead by example as a coach as well.
No, that's a great. I actually read that book my first year up here. The Cardinals put it into effect. St. Louis Cardinals, they used it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Tony La Russa stood up with no pants on the first meeting.
Yes, it's a good book, and I took some things out of there. And kind of one of the concepts I did, where he talked about your goals to process goals.
Yep.
The talk I have now is turning your nouns into verbs, because everybody has nouns. Most people do, things you want, but that doesn't make you get them. You have to put some action behind it. So what are those verbs you're going to have in your life? And man, I suggest another book follow along with that. That's really, man, I just read it and it's in my top 5 I've read, is Atomic Habits. And for me,
love it.
For me, it's, man, what most people miss, that it's really the small insignificant things that you do on a daily basis that create your success or create your failure. And it's given me some more talking points and as a coach, some more things to look for about maybe why this guy's struggling, and it's not so obvious. So you have to start looking at those little details repeated over time. And that's where you get back into, man, look at the future when you're coaching these young guys. Don't think about the right now. Start setting those habits up, and that's what's going to make them successful later on. And we had a lot of guys from the compound go wrestle in college. And I know in the beginning, definitely was not a good enough coach to develop the guys technically with that, but I think we set up some good habits for them. I think that's probably one of the things that we did well by accident from the very beginning. And then later on, when our technical prowess and our coaching strategies got better, just from learning and trying new stuff, that developed too. But I think we set up guys with some really good habits, and really, and that's probably the thing we should focus most on with these young kids, is what habits are we instilling in them? And that's why sometimes I go into youth practices, and fun is starting to become a cliche word in wrestling too now. And Cliff and I have had this conversation because we're a little bit different on this. Like, I cringe a little bit when I see what happens in some practices, because it's setting up bad habits. It's setting up some things that are not sustainable for these kids that want to have success. Because eventually that's our goal, is to keep them in the sport long enough to where they do start having big dreams. Well, what's been instilled in them from the very beginning is not relevant to what they need to do right now. So now, once they made the decision, now you really have to start the work, and we've missed 2 or 3 years. And again, man, I really believe it, because I feel like I did a pretty good job. You can push the kids and train them at a really high level and still make it a really safe, fun, engaging environment for them.
Couldn't agree more.
I think that needs to be the goal for most people. Like, man, you can make it fun and it be bad. Like, and it can hurt the kids. Like,
well, I mean, it was something that you said at a little youth practice a long time ago. It might even just been a young kid at practice. And you looked at it and you were just kind of clowning around, and you said, look, there's a difference between recess fun and hard work fun. And I think that's where, when I say fun, and I put that little thing out on Instagram, like the wrestling guide to, being the best youth wrestler of all time. It was like chapter 1, have fun, be in. It's, and you come to my youth practices, and we got a small one, it's like 8. Like, man, I'm on top of it. Like, we don't play a ton of games. We're not playing I might trick them into playing a body game or something like that, but like, it's an hour of them working. It's an hour of them focusing. It's an hour of them giving me feedback. And it's an hour of them being accountable for wrestling practice, whatever that is for the day. Like, last week, they came in, and I had a box stump set up and some medicine balls, and I had the ropes down. And I asked them, I was like, what do you think? An important skill to be good at wrestling is? They're all young, these different things. And I was like, learning how to work hard is an extremely important skill, not just in wrestling, but in life. I was like, so today we're going to work really hard for an hour. And we just did a circuit for an hour. And I worked those kids into the ground. And I did it with them. You know what I'm saying? We jogged for a little bit, and then we do some footwork drills on the medicine balls, and we do some box jumps, and then we jump up and hang on the road for as long as we could, and things like that. And I think early on, when we started a little practice, like, the kids were just like, we can hit wrestling. And then at the end of practice, I explained it to them. Like, you can take this work ethic and how hard we work for this solid hour and apply that to the next practice when it's not so structured and you got to go to this station and this station and this station. And if you and your partner, you need to be focused and get the right feel and stuff like that. So I think, you're talking about fun versus, what is your definition of fun? And I'm not saying we need to trick them or brainwash them into thinking that working until they collapse is fun, and they think that is the definition of fun. But the
it is fun if you have a sense of a fulfillment, like Roper was saying, though, right?
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. Some you're talking about 8, 10-year-old kids in the kids club. Some of them might be one 6-year-old in there. Well, it's not too young to teach him what a job well done is. Like Roper said earlier, a job well done is I came in and I did this as hard as I could, and I'm gonna pound my chest at the end of practice that I just worked out for an hour. Those kids have probably never worked out for an hour straight. They didn't know a lot of break. Nobody died. But you know what I'm saying? Those kids have probably never worked that hard in their entire life in a structured, controlled, like physical environment. So you can paint that picture and you can let them know. And that's what I told them. I said, hey, and I quoted Roper. I said, look, recess fun is when y'all playing around throwing balls before practice and this, that, and the other, and just play wrestling. I said, we're going to learn we're going to learn some hard work from today. And they probably were the most excited at the end of that little hour circuit that I did than they ever have been. Because they did take pride in it. And I told them, hey, you need to be proud of what you just did. This is probably the hardest you've ever worked. So I think as coaches, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Like, you set the environment, you set the stage, you set the perspective, and then you just kind of guide them through it. Because one kid is a completely different personality and coming from a completely different household and set of values than the other 10, 20, 30, 40 kids.
I think you're right. I think the other thing is that sometimes we're not, in the local club here and the town that I do on Mondays is the first year I did it on Monday at the end of the practice. I think we just think by default that all these kids maybe believe in themselves, right? Or their parents believe in their kids or vice versa. And the exercise that I did is, we had ropes there and said, okay, we're on the rope. The amount of anxiety from just the kids and parents and, freaking out. And I said, no, everybody's going to get on the rope and you're going to try. Right. And there's like 35 kids. And only 2 kids could do a rope, climb with a rope, right? Some were just, I said, well, you have to get on here. There's been so many times in their life that, I can't do it. The parent says, oh, you can't do that. Or they tell them they kill their dream or belief in to start with. And so 2 kids started, at the end of 7 or 8 weeks, every kid in the room could do at least 1 and most of them 2 ropes. And it was like, wow, like if someone believes in me, I can start believing in myself. And the self-belief is also something that, maybe I take for granted. I know I take for granted sometimes my kids because I believe in you, right? And I truly do believe in them. But, a lot of these kids, and being in college, you get to interact with the kids that obviously that's sometimes self-belief, sometimes not. But at the very, very young age, man, they're dealing with things like they've always been told they can't do something, or every time they say they can't, then, their parent defaults out. And I think, self-belief at that young age is so important. I get kids that can't even freaking tie their shoes coming to practice, and they're walking out thinking they can freaking be the next Avenger on the next movie, right? That puts a freaking smile on my face.
Amen to that, man. And both of you guys have said it, and that's I think probably the summation of all we've talked about too. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, man, and I'm glad we didn't get into like the nitty gritty of training philosophies because everybody's got their own opinion and everybody's probably right. But I think the thing that has to happen is, one, the expectation needs to be set and communicated and clear over and over and over and over and over again. In my experience, kids really like that when they know what the boundaries are. They don't care where they are, but they want to know where they are and established. And then they want consistency in enforcing the standard.
100%.
They don't care what the standard is because most of them don't even know what a standard is. They have no idea what you're talking about. And that's our job, to hold them to that standard. So when we started compounding, the advice came from a coach way better than me, is make your standard work ethic. Like, that is the price to be there.
Yeah, you're going to outwork everybody.
If you're here, you're going to work hard. And that's the standard that you protect. And man, it really worked well from kids that were 7 years old to kids that were 18 years old. It was a clear, communicated standard. It was demonstrated by everybody in the room, and it was enforced by us. And to steal a line from, remember the Titans? Like the guy in there, Denzel Washington, talks about like, I'm a mean cuss, but I'm the same mean cuss to everybody. I'm not kind of that way. Like I'm a hard coach. Like I'm tough on guys. One, because I think you have to be to get the most potential you can out of somebody. And I set the standard really high, and they're not going to be able to uphold that standard at first. That's my job. That's my job to get them to that standard, to get them consistency in that standard, and then to get them to buy into the standard. So, man, I really think that's a big point for that both you guys brought up, man. Whatever your standard is, it doesn't matter, because that can be from – think about how many guys you've talked to that had a coach that was like, that dude was a jerk, but I loved him. He got a lot out of me. So there's a lot. Yes, Marty's a great – yeah.
Marty Hudson.
Like, there's a lot of ways you can coach, but the really good ones are very consistent and they're very clear. So I think that's probably one.
I think that's a great point, Roper. And the other thing is like, you know, in the wrestling world, unfortunately, this is going to sound maybe bad, but I think it's the truth. You know, if it's not us or someone close to us, right, we're maybe happy to see other people not reach the same goals to justify or validate. What you said about different tactics, about coaching and getting the nitty gritty, you know, there's a lot of that. I'm going to call it shaming or trashing or whatever, like within the club world of sport. Like, hey, if the parents and the kids in that club are fulfilled and happy with who their coach is and how they go about it, who am I? Like, the only person that would sit there, you know, judge and whatever, how they go about it. If the people are happy, is someone that's trying to self-validate or maybe be insecure on how they're doing things. And, you know, we talk about how we want to build the restaurant, build the restaurant, but, you know, we self-destruct as a culture as well, whether all the way from media, all the way, you know, all the way down to you know, little kids wrestling. It's like, man,
I think that's a societal thing, though. I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I also think it's a wrestling thing too, man. For us that have stayed, like we're all freaking crazy, right? Like we're all crazy.
But Fred, well, it's
people,
for me to say,
people own this, we're nuts. We're warriors at heart. And the reason that stuff exists and why we self-sabotage, because we can't stop competing. We can't. It's in our blood. We step on the line every day on everything we do.
I agree.
Whether it's brushing our teeth or competing with who the best coach is and who has the best training system and who's developing kids better, we're going to compete. And that's one thing I've observed from getting to the college level that, man, I realized I had to tone down a lot, that you can take your competitiveness too far once you become a coach and it can start getting in the way. And I really think that's probably some of the biggest mistakes, at least in my opinion. And again, that's just my opinion, what I believe in, that I see coaches make. They still competing on things that don't need to be competed in. Like you talked about, I have training philosophies that I believe in, like wholeheartedly, and I will defend to the day I die. But I don't need to compete with somebody else because they have different training philosophy as me. And that's where it comes from. Like me wanting to beat their club. So let's take one of the better clubs in Iowa right now. When I was doing compound and Seabolt was doing his thing, like we're not competing with each other in my mind in that sense. We're not. And we had two completely different styles with the way we interact with kids too. I'm not right. He's not right. I'm not wrong. He's not wrong. Right? You believe what you believe in and you do what you do. And whether I disagree or agree, well, that's just my own opinion, right? It's like talking politics. It doesn't even really matter.
I agree with you 100%. And, you know, Mike Tyson said one time, someone asked why he wasn't a coach. He said, I could never be a coach. And as crazy as he may be, he said something he's actually really smart, I think. But he said, I could never be a coach because I think that to be the best coach, you have to kill your own ego. And, you know, sometimes, you know, doing that daily exercise before you go to bed, look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, is your ego in check or not? And, you know, the whole process of why you're doing your competitive, but I think you're dead on, Roper. Like there's different ways to skin a cat, whether Jason Bryant knows that or not. I just seen this comment. But he needs to get out. Maybe he's hibernated in Minnesota still, says whatever, but, self-sabotage within the wrestling community. I mean, there's different people. You probably up in Waterloo at the museum. There's kids that are looking for wrestling. You know, they may save their life to keep them off the streets. You know, there's all different types of ways about going about stuff. And as long as the people that are in that environment are happy at the time, they may not know any different, but if they're satisfied, then freaking let's support each other. Like, I don't know. It's the competition between the clubs though. It's nauseating almost somewhat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And the same thing happens in college too, man. It's like,
oh yeah,
I'm a competitive dude, but in the same sense, when I'm not wrestling another team, like what are we competing in, right? Like for the hour and a half or 3 days, if it's NCAA tournament, wherever at, yeah, I'm gonna try and beat you as bad as I possibly can. But after that, we're all in the same fraternity, right? Like, how can I not like somebody that loves something as much as I love wrestling? There has to be a little bit of respect that I have for them because they've chosen this path too. Something that I'm really proud. I'm really proud that I call myself a wrestler, that I'm in this world. So I agree with you on that, man. We shoot ourselves in the foot a lot because we just can't stop competing. And I get it, man. I'm just as guilty as everybody else.
And then it goes back to the validation of a club coach of, okay, well, we had this many chances. And then it defaults back to the winning side. And then it's just, we get caught in our own trap that we're trying to prevent for kids. And we're all guilty of it, all of us. Right. And it's like, that's what it goes back to, like I was saying about Fretwell today in that text, like having people in your circle that put you in check, keep you accountable. You say one thing and having people hold you accountable to it or put you in check. Those are the best kind of people to be around. And, you can still compete, but it's a healthy competitors.
Yeah. And that's, again, just my view on coaching. It's my athlete's job to compete. It's my job to get them prepared to compete. It's just the way I view coaching.
1,000%.
My competition days are done. And I thank Kerry Colott for a really good talk I had with him at 10:30 in the night when he got jacked up doing a camp for us. That really helped change my perspective on what my role as a coach was.
Well, gentlemen, we've covered a good chunk of stuff. We definitely can do this a ton more and cover a ton more topics. I really like the perspective because I think we are all similar to the same page, but slightly different perspectives. And I think that's what I kind of like about this dynamic and how we can kind of bring different pieces to the table about, especially this youth wrestling club thing. And, I don't think there's a quick fix. But again, I don't necessarily think there's a ton of stuff to fix in a sense. I kind of like you up that way, but it's not this state of panic and just total destruction and despair that everybody kind of wants to paint a picture of. I believe it's a much better spot than a lot of perspective is, especially in the wrestling world, which is it's close to our hearts and close to home to us. But definitely that.
Not a state of emergency, man. Get your kid at a high level in wrestling. They'll meet some unbelievable people. If I had a son or daughter, that'd be the environment I'd want them having. I'd want them to be around those people chasing those goals down too. Some incredible people out there.
1,000%. Thank you, Roper. Thank you, fellers. You guys are awesome.
Appreciate it.
Later.
See ya.